The increased tension in Europe in the late 1930s forced many nations to concentrate their efforts on defensive measures. The most famous of them was the French Maginot Line, a line of concrete fortifications, obstacles and weapon installations built by the French government in the 1930s against a possible German invasion. The Maginot Line was impervious to most forms of attack. It was obvious that the German army will need weapons to destroy at least some parts of this fortress. Towed guns, protected by only a gun shield, were inadequate for this task. A logical solution was to start a development program to create a special self-propelled bunker buster. The 10.5 cm Schwere Kanone 18 was selected as the weapon for this SPG. It sometimes equipped the medium artillery battalions of the German divisions, but generally was used by independent artillery battalions. During the design stage, it became clear that the artillery system will have to be redesigned. The problem was that there wasn't a wide choice of chassis available for such a large gun. The gun was altered significantly for this purpose. A massive two-chamber muzzle brake was added. The gases it emitted raised a cloud of dust and revealed the position of the SPG, but the recoil length was significantly shortened. The barrel also became segmented. The contract was won by Krupp, and the chassis of the Panzer IV was the most appropriate. Work on the 105 mm K18 gun on self-propelled mount began in 1938. The new SPG was presented on the 2nd of May 1939. Calculations showed that the spring suspension from the Panzer IV was 430 kg lighter than the torsion bar suspension. This was the deciding factor for the choice of suspension, as it helped reduce the vehicle's weight to under 20 tons. As a result, the military gave permission to build two vehicles on the Panzer IV chassis. The new vehicle was very much in demand with the German army. According to documents, the overall order for the vehicle, now called Panzer Self-Propelled 4 10 cm, numbered 100 vehicles. The first prototypes were planned in May, but the deadline was moved further and further back. Finally, the two SPGs were built only in January of 1941. By then, the need for a bunker buster was gone, and instead of bunkers, the German artillery was shooting at mobile targets. In January of 1941, a new main target for the Panzer Self-Propelled 4 10 cm was given: heavy tanks. But the mass production of the new SPG was postponed. Shortly before Operation Barbarossa, the German invasion against the Soviet Union, the two SPGs were sent to the Panzerjägerabteilung Self-Propelled 521. This was one of the most experienced units of the German army equipped with SPGs. The battalion was a part of Army Group Center, and the SPGs met at the end of the war in Belarus against the 3rd Panzer Division. According to documents, the SPGs fought with Soviet artillery and infantry in June of 1941 instead of tanks. Their first large target was an armored train. It was attacked by the vehicle, but it managed to escape. The battalion commander remarked on the weak engine for such a vehicle soon after the first battles, which was especially noticeable off-road and on dirt roads. The SPG was nicknamed Dicker Max or Fat Max due to its slow speed. It is not known when this nickname was coined, perhaps it was later in 1942. The low ammunition capacity was another serious issue. The loss of one of the vehicles in late June of 1941 is connected with the ammunition, a very odd occurrence. According to the report of the 521st Battalion, a fire broke out on board of the vehicle during a march. The weather was hot enough to cause one of the shells to ignite when coupled with the heat of the engine. As soon as the flames broke out, a crew bailed out of the vehicle, which continued to move forward for some time. Then the first explosion was heard, after which the ammunition detonated. The fighting compartment was completely destroyed and the SPG was written off. Later, the Germans tried to evacuate it, but it was abandoned in the end. At least, this is the official reason given. The remaining SPG kept fighting until at least the end of September of 1941. During this time, the 521st Battalion continued fighting in support of the 3rd Panzer Division. During the battle, Max fired on a Soviet vehicle column at a range of 3 kilometers. The German crew managed to knock out 4 vehicles, at least one of which was a T-34 tank. The next Soviet tank was knocked out on the 29th of August from 100 meters. Another, identified as KV-1, was knocked out from a kilometer away. On the next day, another KV-1 was knocked out and 2 T-26 that were accompanying it retreated into the forest. As a result of these battles, it was decided that opening fire at a range of over 1 kilometer made no sense. In total, the crew of the Max claimed 7 tanks destroyed or knocked out by the end of 1941. At the end of that year, it was decided that the SPG will not be mass-produced. There is a theory that this decision is connected with the mixed results achieved in combat, but this is not the case. The cause was more likely the information that the Soviet Union was designing or even already building tanks heavier than the KV-1. In late 1941, the 521st Battalion was withdrawn for refit. In June of 1942, the battalion returned to the Eastern Front and was included in the 17th Army Corps, a part of the 6th Army. Even before the German summer offensive began, the heavy SPG knocked out several tanks. By the fall of 1942, the gun carried 12 kill marks, most of which were put there in July. But Max disappeared from the list of vehicles of the 521st in November of 1942. This disappearance coincides with the beginning of Operation Uranus. It is also missing from the late December reports. This was the end of the story of this vehicle. There is photo evidence that Max was knocked out and abandoned. The photo is dated February of 1943. It seems that the Soviet trophy teams were uninterested in this unique vehicle, and after the battle ended, it was simply scrapped.